Matthew Dawson. He is the CEO of TruDiagnostic.
If you imagine a few drops of blood, being able to get 1,600 biomarkers and make those diagnoses of those chronic diseases that I mentioned.
Tell me, all this data and this acceleration, is it because of AI?
So we have an AI app. It's on my phone right now. It's my favorite app. It has all of my DNA, has all my blood work, has all my TruAge tests. And I can ask it questions like, what are the top 3 things for me to reduce my pace of aging? Based on my DNA, my blood work, it's epigenetics and AI together. Both are powerful. When you bring them together, you can see how you can predict nearly everything.
Hello, folks. Thanks for joining. Today, I have a guest that I actually know because we're on the same stage at Lifelong Summit in West Palm Beach last year. Actually, at the beginning of this year, Matthew Dawson. Now he is the CEO of TruDiagnostic, and that's a new position for you. When we met, you had your own company, White Health. You are doing diagnostic and specific things for people to get better, live longer, healthier. So Matt, welcome on board here. We're going to chat a bit about you, why this move in your career, joining this beautiful company, TruDiagnostic. I had the chance to interview Hannah before, so we know the company.
Great.
Thank you for joining.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. So Matt, you took this position as a CEO of TruDiagnostic. What made you change the trajectory of your own life?
So when we met, she and I was CEO of Wild Health. So I started Wild Health about 6 years ago. It's a precision medicine company. So every patient we see, we sequence their DNA, blood work, phenotypic data, collect millions of data points, and then give precision medicine recommendations. Technically, I'm still CEO of Wild Health too. I'm running that, transitioning to someone else taking the helm there right now. We're in the middle of the process. But with TruDiagnostic, the reason I came over, we had used TruDiagnostic within Wild Health for years. Like we used their biological age test. We really like their algorithms and the science. They publish a lot. But what got me really excited was about a year ago, I had a conversation with them, and I got to peek under the hood at some of the science that was coming out. And I became convinced some of it was the most exciting things that I had seen in science and medicine. And we actually haven't published on it yet. We're actually putting a pre-pub out in the next couple of weeks on that science.
But you're going to have to share more on that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a teaser. So I'll say the biological age test, like a few years ago, I wasn't really a big fan. I was like, okay, if you're chronologically 40, but you're biologically 36 or 44, I'm just going to try to optimize you.
Yeah.
It didn't make a big difference to me. We would order them, and I can understand why like following them would be great. I really like the pace of aging test because it's been shown to be very sensitive to change. It allows me to do N of 1 experiments. So I thought it was very cool technology. And aging is the number 1 risk factor for all disease. So it's great to test that and measure it. That was exciting. But the most exciting thing to me was, and I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit about it. So the way we get biological age test is through epigenetics. Look at DNA methylation. So for your listeners, they understand genetics. We're born with certain genetics. You can't change that. That leads to about 20% of your health outcome. The other 80% are epigenetic, what you do, what you eat, what you're exposed to, your stress levels, how you sleep. And all of those things turn certain genes on and off, and you express genes differently. So when we test for biological age through DNA methylation, we look at about 1 million gene sites. We look at how much each of these sites are turned up or turned down. And from that, we can impute and we can get a biological age. But you can get so much more information. So people are familiar with the GRAIL test for 50 cancer. So that's using the same thing, DNA methylation epigenetics. Cologuard from Exact Sciences, same technology. So what they're doing is they're diagnosing cancer. And the reason they can do that is because when you get cancer, you start expressing your genes very differently. So changes in those gene expression, you can then find the epigenetic fingerprint. What does it look like to have cancer, to have those cancers? So we had the thought and the hypothesis Well, if you get cardiovascular disease or COPD or depression or chronic kidney disease or type 2 diabetes, you're expressing your genes differently as well.
Mm-hmm.
Can we find the epigenetic fingerprint of those, just like you diagnose these cancers? So could we, with a few drops of blood on a dry blood spot card, make the diagnosis of these big chronic diseases that are killing Americans? So Harvard has a 100,000 patient biobank. And so we started doing that study, you pull out a certain number. You could pull out, like, for example, 1,000 patients with cardiovascular disease, run their epigenetics, run 1,000 controls, and see, can we find the epigenetic fingerprint for cardiovascular disease? So that then maybe you've got a test and you don't have to do a cath or a stress echo or something that's expensive. And instead, you have a few drops of blood test for it. I can't tell you the results yet for that because we haven't published. We're going to be publishing soon. But what I will tell you is that when I saw the results, it's one of those moments in your life where you always remember where you are because it was very exciting results. So I'm excited about that. The other technology, which I think we're going to put a pre-pub out on this next week. So I can go ahead and talk about this because I'm not sure when this will air, but this is coming very quickly. We also, with epigenetics, so I tell people now with epigenetics, what you can predict is only limited by your imagination and the size of the data set. So, for example, there was a guy named Marioni that a few years ago, he found that by looking at these epigenetics, a million genes, how much each are being expressed, you could predict someone's CRP. So CRP is a level of inflammation, obviously. And when he found this predicted CRP, because if you have inflammation in your body, your genes are expressing them differently.
And so your biological age is going down.
Exactly. Yeah. So he took this predicted CRP, and then he looked at the regular LabCorp CRP, and he said, how good is this predicted CRP? And so the way we define a biomarker being good is, what is its hazard ratio and odds ratio to disease? How well does it predict disease? So he looked at cognitive impairment patients, and looked at their CRP, then he looked at this predicted CRP. And what he found is the predicted CRP actually performed better than the LabCorp CRP. And at first, you're like, wow, how is that? And then you realize it makes sense when you think about the mechanism. So just like with glucose, we don't really care about spot random glucoses. We want an A1C, we want the average over time. So CRP is also bouncing around. But with the epigenetics, you're measuring the biologic effect of CRP over time. So it's like an A1C for CRP. So kind of an upgraded. So in the same Harvard cohort, all these like 100,000 patient biobanks, with big data and epigenetics, we said, can we find another like handful or dozen of these upgraded biomarkers, like that perform better than the traditional version? So we just finished that. We'll be putting it out there in about a week. We found not a handful, but we found 1,600 biomarkers that like toxins, metabolites, vitamins, minerals, things that if you were to sequence all of them, it would cost you over $100,000. And now we can predict them, and they have better hazard ratio and odds ratios than the normal versions, and we can predict them with a few drops of blood and epigenetics. So that is why I joined TruDiagnostic, because I think that's going to take over the world of diagnostics in the next 5 years, and we're just getting ready to put out the publications now.
I got you. Exciting. Yeah, I understand that. So tell me, all this data and this acceleration in terms of making diagnostic or prediction, is it because of AI that you're getting faster? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the convergence of two things, John. Epigenetics, we've just now gotten really good with the new arrays with Illumina and sequencing, being able to look at 1 million genes at once and the exact expression. You can get all that data, but then what are you going to do with it? You have to have machine learning and AI to be able to pull out what is relevant and what's not. So like a patient with cardiovascular disease, if we look at 1 million gene sites, the AI is going to tell us which of the 2,000 CPGs correlate either positive or negative. And so we didn't develop an algorithm for this is the fingerprint, and then we can test. So it's epigenetics and AI together. Both are powerful. When you bring them together, you can see how you can predict nearly everything. I mean, we're working with researchers right now. For example, they're even trying to predict psychopathy, like diagnose a psychopath with a few drops of blood. So you can predict almost anything with it if you have a big enough data set to find that fingerprint.
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to take a test anymore.
Yeah.
But tell me, limitation of all these things is when I look at humans and at large on this planet outside of America, and outside of every country put all together, we are all unique snowflakes. Okay, we are all completely different, and we're basing our results and production on statistics in a way or the other. Uh, are they any limitation to those statistics? Are they? Is it possible that some people just fall outside of those statistics? Like, I'm taking an example. Many people are talking. Many scientists are talking about HRV recently, but you can find people that have a very low HRV but are super athletes, and the contrary, you can find people with a super high HRV and are like the worst athlete or not even athlete that you can see. Would that be would we find similarities in the diagnostic and the epigenetic testing that you are doing as well? Is that possible or not at all?
Yeah, for sure. Everything is statistics, and it's just how good are the statistics. So
Mm-hmm.
I always say science is getting closer and closer to an approximation of the truth. That's my definition of science. We don't ever
I love
actually
that.
answer anything definitively. We just increase or decrease the likelihood of something much more. So to give you an example of that, all of our laboratory testing is based on statistics. So if we were to test someone and measure their hemoglobin A1C, hemoglobin A1C being elevated means you probably have diabetes, but it's not necessarily the gold standard. It has an AUC, or an area under the curve. It's a
Mm-hmm.
combination of sensitivity and specificity. So just because someone has an elevated A1C, it's not automatically diabetes. The AUC is about 0.82, so it's a good test. So when we look at, can we find an epigenetic test for type 2 diabetes, we can. It's not perfect. It doesn't mean they definitely have diabetes or don't, but how does it compare to A1C? Because you're just comparing it to what the next best thing is.
Mm.
And our AUC for type 2 diabetes, I'll tell you in this unpublished stuff, our preliminary run of it is a little bit better than the hemoglobin A1C. So that's a
Wow.
really good AUC. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So we're gonna wait for those publications, and the one next week. So you're changing the way that we're gonna see the future. I would like to jump with you on the biological age mainly. So biological age now becomes more and more a trend. What's your take on this parameter? I've always thought that in few years from now, bank, insurance companies, and all these guys that are involved into money will definitely count on biological age more than on your passport or your ID. What do you think of that?
I think so. I mean, you think about life insurance companies. Their job is to predict mortality, and
Again, statistics.
yeah, they have actuaries there doing it. And if they have a better way to predict it, that's going to be more efficient for them and less wasted resources. So I can certainly see the trend going towards that. Um, there are some regulatory reasons why that may be a little difficult for life insurance to apply. But yeah, and even health insurance, like when it comes to biological age is the number one risk factor for every chronic disease. So when you ask someone, do you smoke? Are you obese? Things like
Mhm.
this, those are important risk factors. They're not as important as age. Age is a bigger risk factor for everything. So I don't know of any insurance companies that are using these biometrics yet.
Not yet.
But if our goal is an efficient system with less waste and better predictions, they probably should be.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. It's probably going to happen soon. I'm going to ask you a direct question. How long do you think you're going to live?
Me,
Yeah.
hmm. Um, how long do I think I'm going to live? I think if I was to predict how long I'm going to live, I think 100 is a good goal for me. Now, I'm saying that not because I think that's like the limit of the human potential. Genetics do play a little bit of a role. Like I said, they play kind of 20%. And both of my grandfathers died, one in their late 40s and one in the early 50s.
Wow.
So they had some other issues going on. But I don't think I necessarily have the best longevity genes. I'm making the most of them. I'm optimizing everything I can, but I also just am realistic about. I don't have people in my family who live to be in their 90s, so I think I can get an extra 20 to 30 years on my kind of grandparents at least. but yeah, that's a good goal for me. And honestly, it's you asked the question. I don't know if I've ever really thought about it because it's not
Oh,
a super important question to me. Because to me, I'm much more concerned with health span and how I feel the entire time. And so I know that one thing I can do for that is optimize my lifestyle and everything I do now. And that number of how long I live, yeah, it's not one as I'm as concerned with as I am my health span and happiness right now and fulfillment.
right. Yeah, the more important, changing the trajectory. Like most people die, but the last 10 years of their life are just miserable. So if we can get them to the extreme, whatever the time when we die, but at least having a life with a nice health span. I'm with you on that. Um, so, what do you do to expand your health span and to improve your health span? What's your tricks? What's your biohacking tricks
Yeah.
today?
So what do? I do everything that I can that adds value to my life. So what I don't do is things that are going to make me miserable now just to get some marginal benefit later. So, and the way I think about it is I like to stack things. So I'll give you an
Please.
example. Exercise makes a big difference. We know that. We know that nutrition makes a big difference. We know that sleep makes a big difference. Um, we know that the number one thing, if you look at the Harvard study on health and happiness, this longevity study Harvard did, the number one thing is connection and your strength of social relationships.
Social. Yeah.
So when I think about how I optimize kind of my biohacks, I try to stack things and bring them together. So what, for example, sometimes we'll start with our company. I live in the woods on 200 acres. So we may
Really?
start our day with a group ruck. So we're together with people. I'm creating those connections. Usually I'm carrying like 75 pounds. So I'm getting a really good exercise in. I'm foraging for food while we're out there. I love foraging in the woods. I love wild food. So I'm creating this connection to my food, eating whole foods. And I'm combining all these things like the connection, the exercise, the nutrient dense food, all of those into something that I enjoy. It's not like I'm going to the gym and
Yeah.
pounding out on the treadmill and suffering so I can live longer. I'm doing these things that I enjoy.
On
And then if I
purpose.
find something where there's good data on, and I like if I look at the ITP trials and it looks like rapamycin is going to have a benefit on longevity and health span, and if it looks like I can take an SGL2 inhibitor and maybe do it, and that's an easy thing to do. The easy things I'll add on as well, but I try to stack things as much as I can.
So, are you testing yourself to see where you stand? Because you run a company that does so many tests.
Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
think you have to have. I mean, if you think from like a business standpoint and like an investing standpoint, everybody has objective markers and like KPIs. I think you should have that for your health as well. If I'm going to take rapamycin for example, I'm not just going to blindly do it. I'll do a pace test before, see what my pace of aging is. Take it for 3 to 6 months. Check a pace test after, see if it's working, and try not to change any other variables during that time. It's not a
Right.
perfect experiment because you can't keep everything perfectly the same. But I try to because there's an endless number of supplements and molecules and things we could do. So I try to take a very objective, N of one approach to it and slowly change variables and figure out what's making an impact and what's not.
Yeah, you're a true scientist with the approach of a scientist for sure. Now, one question on you stack all these what we call I'm trying to call them lifespan because of the lifespanning project I have, but you stack on all these things, but you took two jobs and you're double CEO. What about stress?
Stress is a big one. Stress makes a massive difference, and I think I think it's actually very unfortunate that people think of jobs as stress and two
Oh,
jobs as stress. So because the way I look at it is a little differently. Like this is what I love. This is what I'm passionate about. I hear people talk about work life balance, and it makes me a little sad because I'm like, is your work not part of your life? Is your life not part of and so I take a slightly different approach to that, and that I love Wild Health, which I founded and I believe in. I think it's helping people. I have a purpose with that. I love the emerging science and pushing the science with
yeah.
TruDiagnostic. So both of those jobs feel like play to me. So I feel like I'm playing all day, and it's not as stressful. When it does get stressful, I have to remind myself that this is a mental construct. my favorite book on leadership is one called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And one of the commitments there is a commitment to a life of play. And I tell our people in our team all the time, if it's not fun, we're not doing it right. We need to stop and think about what's going on here. Why is this not fun and enjoyable?
Yeah, it's not always fun. In a business, there are things to do that have to be done, and they're not fun, but it's part of the whole process. And when you step back and you look at it, maybe it was fun in the overall, but some step in between are not always fun. I don't think it's possible that you have any businesses with just like 100% fun.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a
Yeah.
good point. I mean, I do think, and this could be like a debate we're going into, that 90% of the time plus it should be fun. When it's not fun, it should be meaningful to me. So that is a distinction I make. Like doing something hard and meaningful, I consider fun. So it's kind of a definitional thing too. Like if I'm doing a really hard, high intensity interval training workout, like that isn't necessarily fun in the moment, but that intensity, for me, the intensity is kind of fun too. So it's really kind of a definition of
Yeah.
fun kind
Yeah.
of thing.
I like that. Do you have kids?
I have 4 kids. Yeah,
Are they
so
fun?
they are a ton of fun. And when they're not fun, I have to remind myself of how short the period I have with them is, and kind of reframe that in my mind. So they're 6, 8, 12, and 14. So they
Wow.
are at fun ages. I personally, I didn't love the kind of 1 to 4 year the really early time, but I'm having a really fun time and really enjoying these 8.
Yeah. And you know what? He goes fast. My daughter is 19, and I still look back and I'm just like, oh my God, where all these years have gone. Uh, are they going to be in science? Do you think? Are they fascinated by science? Because daddy is a scientist.
Yeah, yeah, good question. The 12-year-old is, she is. I try very hard not to push any of my interest or anything on them. The 14-year-old, no, she is much more into the arts
Oh,
and um, yeah, into the arts and reading and those things. And the 6 and 8-year-old, they're just figuring out what they're interested in. But the 12-year-old is interested in science. I think she may do something in science.
yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because we always look at our parents. My father was a scientist, and I followed the path of science. But today, I think that I would have been better in art and creativity and
Mhm.
things like that. So we always do it because we see our role models there. But anyway, we'll see. They're going to grow, and you're going to follow, and that's it. In terms of business, now let's jump back to TruDiagnostic. So, in the future, you have two companies. Do you think that they're going to merge together?
No,
No,
no, they won't. They won't. I'm really the only real connection between the two is me.
you.
They're two very distinct, separate companies, and I'm kind of pulling myself out of Wild Health and having another leader. It will live on its own. Wild Health was. After it has had an interesting journey, in that after a couple of years, we were approached by a publicly traded tech company that wanted to acquire us, and so they acquired Wild Health. So we were part of a tech company, an AI company for a while. So we added a lot of really cool AI technology to what we did. That company ended up having a really tough time just from their core business, and so I actually took Wild Health back private about 6 months ago. I'm out of the
Oh,
public company, so it's private again. So that's why I'm in a little bit of a transition of transitioning it to someone else leading and running it, just because we had to get it out of the. I thought I was going to be able to walk away and come do
yeah.
TruD, but then because of the public company issues, I had to take it back, and now it's going to be
Yeah.
on its own soon. But they won't merge. TruDiagnostic will just be a straight clinical testing company, and Wild Health will be providing care.
Okay. Okay. To your opinion, is there any merger acquisition that don't fell through?
That what?
They fell through.
Oh,
I sold my company as well, and it was a mess. So,
yeah. I mean, after when we completed the acquisition, the public company, the week after we completed the transaction, they had an activist investor that came in, and it really caused a lot of trouble for them. And
wow.
it just really, and so it was just a really tough 2 years for them. And so it was, so we just never really got a chance to really integrate into that. They ended up having to kind of divest from all of their non-core things because of all the trouble they had. So it was just a very unlucky and difficult situation for them. Worked out fine for us in the end, but that happens sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What about you? When you were in the transition, you're an entrepreneur. How did you feel to be integrated in a bigger company, especially a public company?
Yeah, so it was interesting. Because of corporate practice of medicine laws, we actually stayed pretty isolated within the public company. We were able to kind of do our own thing for a little bit, and we're a little bit isolated because of that. So we never integrated really deeply. So um, at the same time, it was different having a boss for the first time in a long time, and I definitely got to learn a lot and see a lot. Like it was to see what all they went through with the activists and all the board and shareholder shenanigans and everything else. It was a good learning experience. Definitely got to learn a
Yeah,
lot and see a lot that
yeah.
you don't get to as a private company.
I don't think it was that fun.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was. I mean, if you enjoy learning like that, I mean, I certainly was learning a lot.
I
But
like the positive attitude there.
yeah, yeah. So there was some of that that wasn't fun. You're right. But it
Yeah,
was meaning the things that weren't fun. I felt like I was doing them to kind of isolate or to kind of insulate the team and keep this company and the great work it was
integrity.
doing going. So it was
Yeah,
meaningful, like we
yeah,
talked about.
I got it. Uh, what's your strategy for TruDiagnostics? You're the CEO, so you have the vision. They took you in for a reason because you're a visionary CEO. Um, what do you think you're going to do with this company? Are you going to go public or things like that, or IPO? Or
Eventually we may do that. Right now, we're not focused on that. Right now, what we're focused on is commercializing this technology that I just told you about. That with the
Mhm.
Harvard study, it is. There's so much value there. So to be able, with a few drops of blood, and for hundreds of dollars, get hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of biomarkers, that is an immense value. So when I think about what that could do for our health system and what it could do for resource limited countries, we're just very focused on getting that out. So the first step of that, we're actually in about a week, I think next week, launching the first product to come out of that. So of those like 1,600 biomarkers I mentioned, we found like upgraded biomarkers. We're going to put out a report of about the best kind of 160 or so of those that are a lot of vitamins, minerals, nutrients, toxins, hormones, this big panel that is way less expensive than if you were to order
Yeah,
those normal
separately.
ways.
Yeah.
And we're calling that product. So we have TruAge, which are biologic age tests.
Hmm.
We're calling that one True Health.
Oh,
So in about a week, we'll be launching that, and people will be able to purchase that test and get all, and to be able to do then precision nutrition, precision supplementation, because you can see all the
that
vitamins.
was my question. My next question. So first, we are interested in having this product on our platform. Definitely,
Mhm.
we have all the other product and tests that you named before available to our platform, but we would love to add this one on. What I always had as a problem for me, seeing all these diagnostic and things or trackers. I see that you have a Oura ring. um, Many people are getting data, are getting smashed by data and information, but many companies that are providing those tools fail to provide what is next, what are the next step, what do you do with those data when you say you have thousands of data that are coming up with the True Health kits. um, you're going to tell people what they have to do.
Yeah. Yep. So I'll tell you our solution to that, and this
Okay.
is again something that's not out, but I'll go ahead and tell you about it because we're releasing it soon. So the perfect solution to this is large language models. So we started working on this about a year and a half ago. All of like the Wild Health IP that we had initially, we built that on top of a large language model, so that, because like with Wild Health, you get millions of data points, 700,000 genes, all the blood work, all the wearable data that you're pulling in. So we built it on a large language model where you could interact with the data. So we're doing the same thing right now with all the TruD data. So we have an AI app. It's on my phone right now. It's my favorite app. I use it all the time. that I can interact with. So when I do all the testing, so I have like the app, my app that I have, it has all of my DNA, has all my blood work, has all my true age tests. It'll have the true health test with all those biomarkers. And I can just interact with it. And I can ask it questions like, what are the top 3 things for me to reduce my pace of aging? I also can do, like you and I were both in Miami over the weekend at a conference. While I was there, I asked it, hey, what should I have for lunch today? And it gave me a specific dish at a specific restaurant 0 0.1 miles away based on my DNA, my blood work. It knows my A1C and my ApoB, how I slept the last night, my workout that morning. I went for a run and lifted weights, and how much I'd eaten throughout the day, well, my calories. So extremely personalized nutrition that I can interact with it. It also proactively sends me alerts. So a few weeks ago, I got an alert that says, hey, you're overtraining. You're probably going to get sick or injured. And so I then ask it back the question. I can chat with it just like I would ChatGPT. And I said, okay, why are you saying that? And it showed me my HRV trends. It showed me my sleep. It showed me all my data. And I was like, oh, yeah, I've been traveling more. I've been sleeping well. I've been working out just as much. And historically, I'm pretty hard-headed, and I would have just kept going until I broke. But because I saw that, I then said, okay, well, give me a 7-day workout plan to recover. So it gave me a personalized plan to me, knowing what my goals are. Next week, I'm going to Ecuador to climb Cotopaxi. So it knows I'm trying to like climb a mountain and I want to get better at pickleball. So it gave me a workout regimen to recover and keep making progress on those. So that, I think, is the solution to the data. So when people get the True Age test, they get the True Health with all these biomarkers, and they want to upload their DNA, upload their other labs, upload their EHR, they can then interact with that and say, what should I be most concerned about from all this data? Or if they see a biomarker comes back out of range, they can say, how worried should I be? What are the risks with this biomarker? What's it going to cause? What lifestyle things can I do to improve it? Are there medications or supplements that can improve it? And you can actually interact with it. It's like having a health coach or a doctor in your pocket that knows everything about you and your history. So I think that is the solution to the data overwhelm. Yeah. We'll be pushing this out to TruD patients probably in the next few months. We just are tweaking some kind of final things around regulatory and stuff.
Of course. I'm thinking out loud of this. Are you taking off the ownership of life away from the people with that? They rely more on the application than on their gut feeling.
I think you need both. I think the objective and the subjective are critical. So the subjective, like how someone feels and their gut and what they should do, I can't help a lot with that. No. So I think it's critically important, and people have to like listen to their bodies and to themselves and trust themselves. That's very important. I can't help a ton with that. What I can do is give them more data as well.
Yeah. Well, if they use the data appropriately and they learn from it and they start to understand that they increase their proprioception, I think it's an overall positive process, definitely.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Just like the example I just gave of myself, I used to overtrain all the time and I wouldn't listen to my body. And now I have like an objective thing telling me. And so then in the future, hopefully I'll be less hard-headed and I'll start to feel it too. And I won't need that prompt, but it helps. It's a biofeedback mechanism.
Yeah. People need to be educated. That's the thing. We have so much science today that is available, so much data that are coming to our head, but most people are just like closing their eyes and they're just like getting those data in their face, but they're not like trying to learn from that. So what you do, and your example is perfect. Like if you learn, you know how to change your routine, to work out a bit less and to make sure you recover enough, then you increase your proprioception. You're going to feel it next time without having to consult your application, for sure.
Yeah, that's the goal.
I love it. Yeah. My last chapter on having you so interesting conversation with you, Matt. I've seen one of your posts on social media where you were some sort of putting a controversial topic out there, and you said like that person is not saying the right thing. Are you some sort of superhero that wants the truth to be said out loud out there because of all the crap that we see on Instagram and on social media at large?
Yeah. So And I'm not sure which post you're talking about specifically because
You've done that too. You've done that too often, you mean, or what?
well, no, because like personally, I'm not even on social media, but through our company, occasionally, like if I see something that I think, and and it's not that like, so there's a very specific thing that I'm thinking of, like probably the only one thing that I've put out in the last year disagreeing with someone. Um, And so when I see someone say something that just goes against what I understand the evidence to be, then I just state what I think the evidence is and try to correct that. It's not. I'm never looking to get in an argument with anybody. I don't think there's any utility in that.
Yeah.
But like the science is always changing, and it's impossible for everyone to keep up with everything. So I think people have their specific lanes they're in, and they just can't keep up with everything emerging in a specific space. And so if they come into the space that I'm in, that I'm very deep in, and they say something that was true 2 years ago, I'm going to say, hey, that's true 2 years ago. Here's the new evidence.
That's
Like I
what you
said,
say.
science is getting
Yeah.
closer and closer to an approximation of the truth. So it's not that you were wrong, but you got to update your thinking. And so I'm happy to call that out and help people update their thinking.
Yeah, that was exactly what you've done on that. It was actually BioLane, Lane Norton, was saying some things that you said that's not true. It was true a few years ago.
Okay.
This is the truth. Yeah, I like
Okay.
that. I like that attitude. I like that. That's what we're trying to do as well. We see that social media is like swamped with so much information, and most of the time, not scary information or like alarmist information. I don't think that there is anything wrong with the life we have on this planet and the way we live. We just have to be careful and conscious on the choice we make. And I like your attitude toward that, definitely. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I'm always more than happy to be corrected. I much more enjoy being wrong than right because I don't learn anything when I'm right. So I'm always happy to put, hey, here's what I think the evidence is. Here's my interpretation of it, and always happy to have a discussion with anyone.
You're a true scientist for sure. For sure. No doubt on that. Like what we say today is not going to be true tomorrow. And that's the purpose of science, like making sure that it's moving and in the right uh, pace of evolution. Beautiful. Matthew, thank you so much for joining this podcast. We're so thrilled about this new product, and through health, we're going to keep a big eye open on it. I think you're helping this world to be a better world. I'm so happy you joined that company. And I got confused at once because I saw you in West Palm Beach working for your company, and we're together there on that stage. And then I saw you as CEO of TruDiagnostic, and I was just like, my memory is kind of making me.
Yeah. It was a few months after West Palm Beach is when I made the switch. So
Yeah. But great. We wish you the best of luck for this career at TruDiagnostic. I'm pretty sure you're going to take this company to the highest level it deserves. It's fantastic. Hannah will still be working with you, I guess.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
None of the core team is left. We've added a bunch of scientists and bioinformaticians and really growing the team to go after kind of just new biomarkers in general, not just aging.
Yeah. And my last question on that is like, with the volume you're going to probably have making those tests for a couple of $100, you said before, do you think that one day they're going to be so accessible that they could benefit way more people? Because I still find today that health or healthcare or testing is fairly expensive. When you have to stack on several tests, it's just like it's making it possible to most people.
Yeah, for sure. That's the goal. And that's the goal with these epigenetics. I mean, if you imagine a few drops of blood being able to get 1,600 biomarkers that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and make those diagnosis of those chronic diseases that I mentioned that we haven't published on. Like if you get in a few drops of blood at someone's home, you can get all of that, which is like tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars of information for hundreds of dollars. Like that's an incredible jump when it comes to value and getting good data-driven care out to people.
So are you working with insurance company to make this test covered?
Not yet. We need to put the publications out, and then that's the plan. We have had some preliminary conversations, but we really need to put the data out, and then we'll start kind of going kind of the traditional FDA route as well. We may not have to go all the way through that before some insurances will cover, if the data is good enough. But that's the goal. Like we would, even though it is very inexpensive for what you get, if we can get the payers to cover it, that would really be tremendous.
Yeah, that would definitely help humanity. Congratulations on that. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for joining. So where people can find information about you and about the company, well, let's just conclude on this.
Yeah, just TruDiagnostic.com or WildHealth.com still as well. So either of those. I'm an old man, not very good on the social medias and stuff. So just those websites are the best places.
Well, you don't look that old.
Yeah.
Thank you.